Good morning. We're here with Charles Swatzell, who is CEO of Formos, a software company in Vancouver, Washington.
That's correct.
And I'm Tanis.
And I'm Suzanne.
And Charles, we're delighted to have you here today. We're looking forward to hearing your story.
Well, let's hope it's amusing, right? But thanks for having me. It's wonderful to come out, and I appreciate the time, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we would love to hear really your story. Like, how did you become, where did you start and become a CEO of a software company?
Well, it's a long story, and it didn't start in the normal place that most tech founders come from, right? So starting way back. So as a child, I was lucky. I grew up in a small town in California, and the town had nothing except theater. So it happened to have like 8 different theater companies producing theater within one small town, about 500,000 people. And I got lucky enough at the age of 6, I got roped into being the kid in a professional company shows. So for 13 years, I spent my childhood performing on stage next to professional actors, basically being a tree or a rock or the kid in The Sound of Music or South Pacific or whatever these great classics are, but watching these professional actors perform. And so I thought that's what I was going to do. I graduated high school. I moved to New York. I studied musical theater. I then moved back to California and opened a dinner theater with one of my producers from when I was a kid. So he called me. He said, hey, you do lighting design. I was doing some choreography. I perform on stage and do musical stuff. And he was a writer and a producer. So he said, the two of us together, we can build a theater. So I flew back from New York. I met with him. He pitches this idea to me. And I'm like, this sounds amazing. Where are we going to do it? And he goes, well, I don't have that yet. I don't have a spot. And I said, wait, I flew all the way here because you had a theater and you don't have a theater. Like, that's a place. Like, what are we going to do? So we were sitting in a restaurant. The restaurant was empty. It was Friday night. And so we saw a really sad guy in the corner. And I'm like, I bet that guy owns this place. And so we pulled him over to our table and we had dinner with him. And by the end of the dinner, we had bought out the restaurant Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and 2 shows on Sunday. And we started produce theater there 30 days later.
This is amazing.
So
No, just kidding. I want to say really quickly, Charles he's a bit of a unicorn because not only is he a phenomenal business person, but he's an entrepreneur. And I mean, he encompasses a lot. And so you'll hear repeatedly how he recognized an opportunity and then made it happen. And then he marries that with actually being a pretty fantastic manager. So he's quite an interesting person, really.
No, what I find interesting just at the childhood part, like Tana said, taking that risk of getting outside of your comfort zone immediately and saying, okay, yes, I've spent all this time in the front, on stage, to then go to the back of the stage and create something new. That's very brave.
Yeah, well, you can call it ignorance, right? Whatever you want to call it, right? I just didn't know better. And through all of that, we ended up overrunning those. We sold out our first season in a couple of days. We had done theater in this town for so long that we knew a lot of people. And so we sold season tickets. We ended up owning a restaurant, a bar, a coffee shop, and a banquet facility all at the same time while producing 9 shows, 9 different productions a year.
And this is the same small town that you have competition with all these other theaters.
That's right.
That's amazing.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it was a great time. I met my wife there. It taught me a lot about business, just kind of a crash course in what not to do mostly. But I was able to meet my wife. She was my office manager at the time, and later became my wife. And then did that for as long as I could, right? You can't run a coffee shop and a bar and a dinner theater and sleep. And so I found myself sleeping in the office, just burning the candle on both ends, but loving every minute of what I was doing. At a certain point, I got married. We started to have kids, and we realized this is fun, but I need to make a real living. Like, I need actual revenue to come in. I have obligations. I can't just be that starving artist anymore. And so I was trying to figure out what do I do? I have all these skills, and I don't think I can make the living I needed to make standing on stage. I may be more practical. My mom's Asian, so I say I get all that practicalness from my Asian upbringing, right? But so I decided that sales was the closest thing I had to acting, right? And acting is very much so, understanding why somebody does something and then figuring out how to genuinely recreate that on stage. Mm-hmm. And sales is figuring out why somebody may want something and then figuring out how to present it to them in a way that they understand that's an equal exchange. And so I took a entry-level job with a T-Mobile store. I walked in there. A couple months later, I was running the whole region of the Salt Lake City Valley. They then said, hey, do you want to be transferred back to run a region in California? I said, great, where is it? It was between Northridge and Fresno, which happens to be right from the town I was from. And so I was like, that sounds fun. And I ended up becoming a sales manager. So I went back to school, got my business degree, then went back and got my master's in human resources training and development, and then trained a bunch of salespeople to make money for T-Mobile.
So you were working full-time.
Full-time.
Back to school for 2 different degrees, including graduate school, while you're married with a wife and kids. It sounds like you're still burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah, I didn't notice that wasn't what you just did, right? Like you just went back and you did it, and I was ambitious, and I knew that in order to get the interviews that I wanted, I had to have that piece of paper behind me. I didn't have a network, right? I had moved out of the town that I knew everybody in, so I just had to go out and play the game, and so. It was a lot of fun. I got relocated up to Portland to be a sales manager and a trainer for a construction company. I realized that industry was something I hated as soon as I got here, and so I left that, went to work for Apartment Guide and Rent.com. Loved that. Became the fair housing trainer for the Association for Housing here in Portland. So I was doing all the fair housing training for the market, which was wonderful. And then I met a startup guy who was pitching. We were at a reverse trade show. So it's kind of like speed dating, but so the vendors move and the people you're trying to sell to have booths. And my team from Apartment Guide was pitching right next to this other guy who had this concept. And this concept was, I want to build a platform, or I have a platform that you could pull one background check and instantly screen against every vacant apartment in any town and know where you qualify before you send your information over there. Properties will love it because everybody that comes through the door qualifies, and renters will love it because even the most qualified renter spends about 90 days trying to find a place. We can help you find a place in less than about 30 minutes.
And then there's also a lot of times deposit money and other things, so you can totally see the benefit from both sides. Absolutely.
It was huge. And so I pulled him aside after hearing his pitch for 3 hours that day and said, hey, if you actually have this thing, like you're going to give all of us guys a run for our money. And he said, well, that's good. I don't have anything. And I said, wait, you have nothing? And he goes, well, I have these slides that I've been showing all day, but I don't have a product. And I said, so what are you doing here at a trade show? And he says, well, I'm trying to see if the market wants it. I'm trying to validate this concept. And I said, oh, this is intriguing. So I left ApartmentGuideRent.com. I waited out my non-compete, and we built that together. That original platform was called No App Fee. It's now called One App Rentals it's still based here in Portland. But 2016, we were named top 5 global tech startups by one of the larger incubators in the world. Had a really fun run there. Started to build tech. I spent 2 years of my life trying to build that product with a tech firm based out of Houston, failed miserably at building it. And then one of our investors came and put his arm around me, and he's kind of these, genius style tech leaders in our market. And he says, hey, Charles, I'd love to give you more money, but your tech isn't any good. And I said, no, I know. I need your money so that I could build better tech. And he said, okay, but if you're going to build it, you need to build it with Formos based out of Vancouver. And my answer was, if you're giving me money, I'll build it with anybody. Like, just tell me. So Matt, who's our owner at Formos, came out with our CTO, and he said, hey, give me 3.5 months and about $250,000, and I'll get your whole product rebuilt into market. So I called him a liar to his face, because the only thing worse than construction as far as timelines is software development.
Absolutely.
Nobody hits timelines. Nobody hits budgets. So we, and he said, Charles, he goes, if you don't trust me, then we shouldn't do work together. Pushes back from the table, gets in his car, and drives back from my office in Tigard back to Vancouver. And I look at my COO, who was like 18 years at Intel, and I said, have you ever seen this happen before? Like, what did I do? And he goes, no, but we should work with those guys. And so I called Matt. We signed the contract the next day, and they got us to market 15 days early and $15,000 under budget.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And I said, holy cannoli. So let's do it again. So we did 27 iterations of the software while I was there, and then I left. I had built a small company with my wife that we've sold in the last couple of years, but I was going to go do that. And Matt, the owner of Formos, called me on my way home my last day at my startup and said, hey, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to go home. I built this company with my wife. We're going to do that. And he said, can we go have drinks? And so 7 hours later, I was working at Formos. So we sat and talked for 7 hours. I first came on as chief strategy officer. First day of being at Formos, I broke everything. They'd been around for 16 years at that point. They were about 80 people globally. And I brought a couple friends with me who needed software development. And they're like, oh, that's great, but now we can't have any more business. We need to grow. And so as soon as I broke it, we kind of decided we needed to do a better global growth strategy. And so I ended up stepping in as CEO. My partner, Matt, ended up spending more time in Ecuador and Vietnam, where we have some of our offices, to help grow those teams. And now we're here.
That's amazing. I always think that life, is never a straight line. And we talked about this earlier today, and how you have to ebb and flow, but yet there's something about taking those chances and those risks and listening to your gut of saying, okay, I'll give this a try. And then I laugh so hard of 2 years, 27, different things. Because especially at that point, technology, it's changing so fast. How running a tech company, how are you keeping up? And how are you being innovative and staying innovative?
It's fascinating because specifically in like the software tech world, there's a lot of what we call like the flavor of the month technology, right? Every time you open up a new trade magazine or a website or go to a conference, they're talking about this next new big thing. And the reality is 95% of those things aren't ever actually viable in market, right? So like we're chasing a bunch of this AI stuff right now, right?
I was going to ask you about AI, yep.
And, everybody's pitching AI as being new. And, we've built on like the enterprise software side, we've built decision models. When we first built No App Fee, I built an engine that if I pull your background check, I can screen you against the unique data for every single property in a given town, right? So there's this huge model behind that that's making all these decisions for you. All of that is AI, but that was years and years ago. And so what's happened in the last couple of years is we've gotten a bunch of these really good consumer-grade AIs. You can now go on ChatGPT and type something in and have it tell you, all these things. We've built really cool like recipe generators that generate recipes based on what you have in your cupboard or your dietary restrictions for some of our clients. And they're very cool. But really what's happened is that they've just come to the forefront, right? They're now, you don't have to be an engineer to understand them. But the models that things like AI are based on are things we've been doing forever. And so for us, it's about innovation in a way that's stable. So we want to be ahead of the curve, but not too far ahead of the curve. Because when we build something for a client, I want it to be able to be maintainable. So we have a bunch of these languages that have come out. You talk about the languages that people develop in. And, we'll still say at Formos, most of our stuff is Java. And Java is an enterprise language that's been around forever. And the reason we still use it is that it does what our clients need it to do. And you can go into any coffee shop in Portland and find 2 Java developers. And so part of this is you have to make sure that your stuff is extendable, that it's buildable, that you're not going to build it this year and then rebuild it next year.
Right.
And so it takes a lot of discipline to be innovative. And you don't normally think of those two things together, right? You have to understand how to like pull back on the reins so that you don't innovate yourself into a corner that ends up being this like, hey, we finally got market penetration and people like this. Oh, crud, we have to rebuild everything in order to service our clients the way we want. And so you want to make sure that just from like an enterprise software side of things that you're able to balance those two.
So this podcast is really about how leaders impact organizations and maybe at a macro level, like their community or the world. And I think that, I said it earlier, you encompass a lot of really unique skills. And Matt saw something in you that he wanted to, at first have leading strategy and then leading the company. So how, do you see cultural elements of Formos that existed before you came on that you were particularly in line with? And that's part one of the question. And then the second part is, how do you think, your own, the unique set of beliefs and values and skills you bring to your organization has kind of, infiltrated the organization?
So when I came to Formos, I made the joke that other than the person that cleans one of our offices in Vietnam, I was the only non-engineer in the entire company, right? So I came on, I sat in the office the first day and nobody spoke. There wasn't a word in the office. I literally went out and invested in really expensive headphones because I was just going to go crazy, just sitting there staring at these people, just, typing all day. But Formos has always had a brand of precision, right? So we've been on time, on budget for every project we've quoted for over 10 years. The way we do that is we don't make promises we can't keep, right? We're very honest. We're good at saying no, which is hard in our industry. But it's very integral. Everybody who works for us, we want them to be able to be proud of the product that we deliver. And we don't want them to have to show up to meetings explaining or making excuses as to why we're late. Those are really bad days in our industry. And so we work really hard to make sure that that's not a thing. That was there well before I got there, right? The product was phenomenal. And our team was really proud of the product we were producing. And so this was something I was like, especially coming from like sales management, I looked at it and I go, you can sell something for like a month. And then the second month, you're like, I don't know that I love that product that well, right? And so 16 years into an organization to have people still this proud of the product that they were delivering was this amazing thing for me to try to get my hands on and figure out how to grow. When I came in, if you would have asked the engineers what we do, they would say we build software. And I say, well, that's kind of what you do, but we build software because we have amazing people. And so I tried to pivot that to say, no, we're a service-based company. And yes, our service happens to be that we build software, but really we're a people-based company, right? We employ really gifted, really talented people. We empower them to create things in a space that stuff doesn't create, right? We take air and ideas and you do some work and all of a sudden there's a thing there, right? And so we work really hard to make sure that we lead people first, right? So there's things like in Vietnam where we have our office. We opened that office in 2007. That office has, between the two offices we have there now, we're about 80 people within that organization. So like every year we take them, our employee, their spouses, their children, occasionally their grandparents to the beach for a number of days. And we just go and we have a ton of fun. We play crazy games. We do a lot of fun things. But specifically, when you think about offshore development, you don't think about companies focusing on that level of human connection, of actually being able to spend time with people's families. I, before COVID, knew everybody in the company because I could travel and I spent a lot of time in these offshore offices. But I also knew their spouses and I knew their children, and I got to sit down and have drinks with their dad while we were out on these trips. And so, running a global organization that has the people focus to be that heavy is what I want to do. My background's not software. I am very passionate about building things, but I'm passionate about people, not really about software, if that makes sense. And so this is an opportunity to lead an organization that I don't have to worry about inventory, right? I don't have to worry about other logistics. I have to worry about, are my people well? And are they able to serve our clients well because they're first taken care of?
Yeah.
And how did that approach change the vibe at Formos?
Yeah, I think specifically in engineering organizations, I don't think it really is what people lead with.
Right.
And software engineering, I say between software engineers and gamers, that's why we have energy drinks, right? It's because you don't sleep. You burn the candle all night, every night. Our shop operates, it feels kind of like a union shop where occasionally I'll open my door at like 5:05 and I look down the hallway and I'm like, where'd everybody go? Like, how did they all get out of here so quick? Wow. And it's discipline to say if you're well planned, if you would know how to approach your day, and if you're trying to make good decisions, you can really protect people's life outside of work. Yeah. And so our tenure is great. Our average employee globally is with us for over 5 years.
Wow.
In tech
and in offshore, right? So we have the two offices in Vietnam and Quito, Ecuador. And so it's been this amazing change in the organization to be able to keep people, to promote from within, to grow people's careers, try to make clear career paths for individuals who join us, and hopefully just entice them to not leave, right? And to stay with us because we build amazing projects. And our clients love that because our average client engagement is also over 5 years.
Wow.
And so these clients get to know our team, and it's really hard to leave because you build such trust and relationship with these core individuals. And I have never experienced that anywhere else in the industry.
Well, and so we're hoping, that to give real life, recommendations and value to people who are listening, and building that again culturally and bridging that gap in areas that don't have the same emphasis that United States does. I mean, you talk about Ecuador and Vietnam. How is that? What approach did you take, and how do you keep it up? Because that's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. And I wish to say that there's a trick I know other than brute force, right? And I care, Matt cares, and our team, tries to show that level of dedication to both our team internally and our external clients, right? And that's, again, an emotional-led space in engineering. And that's, I think, a little novel. I think the other thing is that we're a very practical company. So my response to the way we talk about company culture within America, I think, has been misled for quite a while, right? And so when we talk about companies that have built amazing places for people to work or places that people love to be, you think about Google maybe has fallen out of style lately, but you think back, in the early days of tech, Google was like, hey, they have M&Ms a block, a foot away from my desk, and I can sleep in this cool pod, and I can and they have a slide to get from the third floor to the first floor, right? And I look at that and I go, oh, great, you no longer have to take a break to go get food, but you probably need a break, right? You no longer have to go home to sleep. If you work too late, you can just go to the pod that's a foot away from your desk and sleep there and then come back and be refreshed. And none of these things actually add to quality of life. So early on when I was with T-Mobile, they paid a ton of money to get us out to Las Vegas. They put us up in amazing resorts. We ate amazing food. We saw great shows. We did scavenger hunts through the strip in limousines. And I was a young married man who had just had our daughter. And I sat there the whole time thinking, why the heck am I here? Like, why do I have to be here? And so everything I look at in company culture, I look at to say, why do people work? Why are they here? If they loved absolutely everything about it, they would volunteer. So because we pay them, there's this value transaction. And why do they need that value? And it's not so that they can sit at their desk longer. It's not so that they don't have to take lunch. It's not so that it's normally so that they can take care of themselves, live the life they want to live, or take care of their family and their children, right? And so the fact that we do have beer in the office because we're a tech office, right? But, the fact that you often hear people talk about beer on tap, bean bags, the ping pong table, the fact that the Xbox set up in this room, I look at all of that and say, wait, we all have jobs to do. So if you're playing ping pong or you're playing Xbox, is that time that you're now going to be in the office after 5 o'clock to try to get deadlines met? And I think in many cases it is. And so it directly takes away from the value transaction of why we work. And so we've said we're not going to do any of that. So we have a shuffleboard table that people play while they wait for their coffee to brew. We do have beer on tap, or not on tap, but full in the fridge, and we do happen to have a full bar in the cafeteria. But we make a point to say, like, our happy hours don't start at 5. They start at 4. And at 5 o'clock, everybody goes home. And everything we've done within the company has been based around that premise, is that we want you to love the time you're here, and then I want you to get the heck out and go do the things in your life that is why you came in today in the first place.
Yeah, and it is that people first, and it is novel because we do work with a lot of technology organizations that look at the product and talk about the product and never talk about their people. And so with that, you have the retention, the longevity of clients, the success, and the growth. I think that is valuable. Earlier on, you mentioned that you have to balance innovation and make these really hard decisions on what you're going to build and drive for. How do you make those decisions?
Specifically in tech?
Yeah.
Yeah. I surround myself with really smart people.
Okay.
Right? I've been on the engineering side of building software long enough in my life that occasionally I say smart things. But for the most part, I'm a really good second chair, right? And so I bring in people that I trust that have our best interest as a whole in it. And all of our leadership that's on the technical side are still current. They're still technically current. So we don't allow our CTO, Andrew, who's a wizard, to use the technology or the knowledge of technology he gained when he got his master's, 18 years ago now, right? And so if something goes sideways, all the way from the top, they're firefighting. So if we have a client who has an outage for some reason, it's going to go through the chain, but Andrew knows that at a certain point, he's going to have to get in the boat and row if we can't get it fixed. And so he's having to make decisions that in the end, he's writing checks he's going to have to cash, right? And that level of ownership and care is something that I think, mandates this level of responsibleness to it. The nice thing is Matt, who's our owner, is also a wicked smart engineer. And so anytime I hear something, I'll just text him. I said, I don't want to sound dumb, but can you please help me understand what this person just said? And he's really good about, making sure I don't feel that dumb. But
And so that comes into your recruiting strategy. If you're aligning people with the same goals, vision, mission, do you feel that that cultural piece trumps the technology, or is it really trying to balance that?
yeah, it's an interesting thing because engineers are not known for being complete humans.
Right.
Right? Especially when it comes to this company culture part. And so it is fascinating that every engineer that's part of our company takes a test. And this test is an actual engineering test. It's not asking you questions, it's actually asking you to do. Currently, the test we're giving right now is a POS system and an inventory tracking system for a fruit smoothie restaurant. So think of like Jamba Juice, right? Yeah. Fruit smoothies are the only things we found that everywhere in the world they have, it feels like. Maybe not in Antarctica, but we're not hiring there, so it's not important. That's a big part of it, but that's the easiest hurdle to overcome, right? That's kind of a math test. We can look at it, we can make assessments if they can work within our environment. Yeah. The rest of our interview process is not necessarily engineering focused. So our standard interview with me is over 2 hours. And we're not talking at all about engineering stack. I don't want to get into that tug of war with a future employee because they'll win. Like that's a bad place for me to be. I have other people who do that. I said that my conversation with Matt was 7 hours. People go through, probably more than 10 hours of talking to leadership at Formos before they join our team.
And is that all levels?
It's all levels.
Wow.
It's all levels. So I approve every hire in Vietnam and Ecuador. And so even as we grow, I get to ask these culturally important questions to that. But the thing is that when somebody joins our company, day one, they know how passionate I am about our product and our team. It's not something they have to learn over the first week of how things happen. So we set context before they come in. And it's wonderful because then when they actually see that we mean it, that when they show up, this is how we do paperwork at Formos. I remember the first day I sent an email to a friend of mine from my corporate email, and I CC'd my partner, Matt. And Matt came over and he said, "Hey, Charles, are you okay?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "That email, I was afraid you had a stroke. Are you okay?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Just read it back." And I read it, and I had just botched. There were too many commas, and I misspelled a word, and I was like, "Well, but he knows what I meant." And Matt said, "Yeah, but that's not our brand." And I said, "Wait, I'm inside, I didn't say this, but I'm like, I'm a C-level employee here, team member here, and you're giving me a hard time because of an email I sent to a friend of mine that we do work with." And it just clicked. I was like, "Oh, that's how much we care." And it's not a matter of, he was trying to help me not look dumb, but also he was like, "Wait, he's run this company for 16 years and he cares about this." And as people understand that as they join our team, it's really easy to get them to care as well. And then all of a sudden you find out that they're a lot happier about what they do if they care and they feel like they have a role. So the other thing on this is that I tell people I employ or I hire like you cast a sitcom. Yeah, and if you meet my team, you'll see it. Like once I say this, you'll kind of start to understand what I mean. But I think of Family Matters. I may be showing exactly how old I am, right, for this moment in time. But Family Matters only needed one Steve Urkel, right? You put two Steve Urkels in that sitcom and it doesn't make sense. And so if you look at my team, it's about empowering people on the things that they bring to the table, right? So that person played a certain character. And so you look at that and you go, okay, you're an engineer, you're going to work with somebody. But if you're an engineer and you do exactly what everybody else does within the team, or even have, duplicity within your team of 100% of what your task is, what you do and how you do it, then you end up feeling like a cog within a machine, right? And so this is about pulling out of people what it is that they're great at, what it is that they want to grow at, clearly understanding their career path, and having, even though, within my team here in the U.S. is about 15, most of them have the exact same job title. But most of their career paths, what they do every day, is very, very unique. And it's because I want them to show up to a meeting and not feel like they're dispendable, right, or disposable, right? They have an important part. And if you look at it, each one of my technical project managers or my solutions architects, if you talk to one of their clients about how that engagement goes with them, there's a couple things in common. We write good code, we build good products, and it's on time, and we're very accessible. Everything else is that person's ability to bring to the table their own personality, their own piece. And if you watch how my sales organization sells our team, because we're selling access to people, you'll hear them talk about it. I'll always talk about Andrew as being a wizard. I'll always talk about him being the smartest guy in any room, right? And we figure out how to talk about people so that when one of my TPMs come into a room with a client, that client already knows kind of what this person's going to do. The other side to that is that you think of actors like Steve Urkel. He probably had a hard time later in his career because that's all we saw him as, right? This typecasting piece that you see in acting. So we also work really hard to tell people like, hey, if that ever gets heavy, if that role gets tired, let's have a conversation about it, because I want you to talk to me about the seat you want to be in the boat and not leave the boat. So we've had people. I brought my operations manager from my startup to me at Formos. He started as our operations manager. About 2 years in, he's like, Charles, I really like this. I like Formos, but I don't want to do this. Can I be a PM? And I said, well, let's think about it. You have key attributes of you're really good at organizing things. You're good at driving a team to a collective goal. You're non-technical, but we can teach you that. And so all these skills from you being an ops manager, they directly correlate to you being a PM. Let's try it out. And so that was a little over 2 years ago now, and he's probably one of my best PMs. And so it's also about giving people the opportunity to flex into different roles within the company.
Well, and that example just highlighted, again, about your leadership style and what has been successful. So what advice would you give your 20 years ago, what advice would you give yourself as a leader?
I thought at some point in my career I'd stop doing when I was 20. That at some point you learn to golf, right? You go to happy hours at 2, right? You start to do all that stuff. And so I was always looking for that, and then really disappointed when it didn't happen. And I realized that I don't know how to be a captain without actually driving the boat, right? Being in the office. I try to be the first one there. I try to be the last one to leave. And I think that looking for that for so many years really misguided me in kind of what I was trying to get myself out of work. The other part is for many years, I didn't make work play. Work was work. I'd go home, I'd talk to my wife, I'd complain about all the crud I picked up throughout the day. I'd miss kids, soccer matches, or occasionally when they're in the hospital, be on the phone in the hallway, which I wish I didn't do, but did it because it's what I felt needed to happen. And for many years of my career, work became the thing I had to do. And it's a dirge. You get up, you need the 2 cups of coffee before you can get in traffic. You sit in traffic and curse the whole way, and then you get there and you just kind of slog through it. And then a couple years ago, I heard somebody say, hey, I don't ever get sad about the amount of work I put in because I figured out how to make work play. And I was like, that's not real. Like that's a good soundbite. But I've really taken that on to say, okay, how do I make this fun? And it's not about not putting in hard work. It's about solving hard problems. It's about looking and saying, okay, the ship is good, the ocean's calm, everything's fine. And then saying, okay, but now I'm going to insert this is my time to innovate. I'm going to insert some difficult problems now to solve. Because if the ocean's calm and the boat's okay, I'm going to get bored and, going to get out. So,
well, I think we are wrapping up on time.
Yeah, but I would love to ask Charles our last question.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I hope we can have you back again because I think you bring a lot to the conversation. The last question we like to ask our guests is, the title of our podcast is Hiring for Good, and that has a lot of different iterations. What does it mean to you?
Good question, I guess, yeah. I should have seen that one coming, too. I tell people all the time that I'm in a really lucky place because I work with people that I really love being around, right? And the reason that I like being around is that I think they all approach what we do, kind of how they live their lives with some of the same core principles. That they are people who are trying to add to the increase of the people they hang out with all the time, right? So they are supporting our other team members when they are having hard times in life, or they're coming to me and saying, hey, Charles, you were here at 6 a.m. this morning. It's 8, you're still here. Please go home. Like, I'm going to call your wife if you don't go home. And it's the idea that I hire good people and watch them do great things. And that allows us as an organization to support each other, support our families, but also to be active in the community. When I look at the nonprofits that my team runs, or the things that they get to do within their life because they have a good career and they're stable and they're successful, the amount of stuff that they give back in the community is amazing. And it's an unintentional side effect to making a really stable, safe place for people to be, is that they have the brain space to not go home and try to solve the problems they left. They can go home and they can fix the problems in their community. They can be active in their kids' lives. And it's all from this very basic foundation that I think is so simple, but is so missed in business. And so I'm thankful to be in the seat I am and to be able to proxy do good through the team that we employ. Yeah.
Thank you. That's beautiful. I think we couldn't end with a better message. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for joining us today at Hiring for Good. If you were inspired by our conversation, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you want to learn more about our executive search services, check us out at www.hiringforgood.net or our company website, Acumen Executive Search.
Thanks so much, and don't forget to join us next time for another in-depth conversation about transformational leadership. Until then, have fun.